In this video, I'll show you how to master Terraform state once and for all, how to back it up, restore it, import and move resources safely, and recover from issues that can break Terraform's ability to track and manage your infrastructure. Let's be honest, managing Terraform state sounds pretty boring, right? But trust me, the day your state file gets corrupted or Terraform loses track of your resources, you're going to be glad that you watched this video. Watch to the end and you'll walk away knowing how to handle state like a pro and avoid the mistakes that I learned the hard way. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share this with anyone working with Terraform so they don't get caught out either. Okay, so I've created a blog, so it should be easy for people to follow that don't want to watch the video, but then the video will demo most aspects of it. This is not a video about where you should store it, how you should secure it. It's more about how you can manage it, manipulate it, and recover from any accidental issues or even corruption. Let's have a quick refresher on Terraform state. So Terraform state is pretty much a JSON file. It's how Terraform tracks your code against real resources in Azure. And then obviously if there's things different, you use a plan to show you what your code will do against what resources there are in Azure. And then on apply, we'll obviously apply the changes. Okay, so before we get started, I'll just throw a little disclaimer out there that this is an informational demonstration to show you and make you more comfortable with Terraform state. You're accountable for the state files you manage, and I am not holding any accountability towards it. So let's get started. So the core topics we'll cover is backup and restore state. So I'll put this at the top because I don't want people running through this and trying to do things and then, oh, I don't have a backup. Next is importing resources, moving resources, removing resources, and unlocking state. So if we just get straight into it, I'll walk through quickly what I have here. So I've just deployed some resources here. There's no real compute or anything, but what I'm going to test with is NSGs because they don't cost me anything. So if you have a look here, I've just deployed some code. Now we'll just walk through quickly what the code is. If you look here, I'm using AVM modules. So I am deploying a virtual network and a subnet here, a route table, and multiple NSGs. So NSG, NSG2, and then a native NSG, which I'll move towards a module version later on. And then if we go look at the environment that we have here, so if you look here, I just have a resource group here with a storage account. I've got a little script that will create a storage account and it will lock down the network controls. So this just has my internet IP, which I should probably change after this video. And the code has created a backend, which is TF state. Obviously, I have the required networking and RBAC to look at this. So you may have challenges in the enterprise environment or your work environment. I have that documented here as well and ways around that. So if you look here, this is basically a state file. And yeah, we'll walk through this later, but I'm just showing you the environment. And then I have another resource group, which is TF resources demo, which has all the resources. So I've left my state separate. Obviously that allows me to limit permissions to it and things like that, but I just wanted to have it separate so I can destroy the resources and leave my state if I need to. Okay, so let's go back to the blog. So I've just got a little caveat here that it's always a good idea to make a backup of your state file before you perform any changes. That just gives you a rollback at all times. Now, we'll also talk about blob versioning as well. I also highlight the challenges, which I've already mentioned, about using Terraform CLI to directly pull down state, because you need to keep in mind that if you're using a remote storage account, that you need network connectivity and permissions itself to the container, which in most cases, in the places I've worked in, they're generally locked down. So you generally can't access a storage account from your laptop. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so there's 4 points that I've highlighted here on how you can get around this. Terraform has introduced a whole bunch of features, and these are code blocks, which include import blocks, remove blocks, and move blocks. And these are an alternative to Terraform CLI commands such as rm, mv, and what's the other one? Import. And what the key benefit of this is if you work in an environment where you don't have access to, say, credentials, an example is in a previous place I worked at, we had multiple service principal identities, and we had Terraform enterprise workspaces, which had the secrets securely stored, so you didn't have access to them. And then the other thing is, you may not have network connectivity, and you may not have permissions with your own account. So by using Terraform code blocks, it actually allows you to leverage off the identity on where code is applied. So if you're running it through a pipeline, the build agent will have the access, and rather than running commands, which, trying to put commands into a pipeline is a bit tedious, you can basically just add code blocks, which will automatically execute the commands within code and do it for you. And they'll just run once, and once they've run, they won't run again. So secondly, you can use the Azure Portal to manually download state, which again, if you don't have access, either RBAC or network connectivity, you'll have challenges. Enable blob versioning, and that's where we talk about any write to the actual blob itself will be versioned, which is a very good safety mechanism to have continuous backups. And then obviously executing commands on the build agent. But that, that gets a bit messy and everything else. So we won't even really talk about that, and we won't really go down those routes. So let's talk about backing up state. So you can basically run a Terraform state pull command into a file, and the default naming standard for a state file is tf state. So let's quickly flick back to VS Code. So obviously I've just done an apply, but if I do I've got shortcuts, by the way, so I'll elaborate what the shortcuts are when I'm getting to them. So TF is obviously just for Terraform. So if I just go state, Terraform state pull, and then just output it to a file, which is called backup.tf state. So obviously I have network connectivity and permissions to the storage account. Okay, so I've just pulled down a file, so looks like it's here. So I just want to show you what the contents of the files are. Ignore this admin password. So, this is just a demo, and I'm not actually using it for anything. I was going to use it to build a VM just for a demo. But if you look here, we've got a version 4, and it tells you the Terraform version and the serial. The serial is what we want to focus on, but this is what a state file looks like. It's basically pretty much a JSON file, and you can see here it's got all the information. So you can see here, to restore state, what we actually need to do is update this serial. So the serial needs to be higher than what is in the storage account. And obviously I know it's 3 right now because I just downloaded it. So you just got to keep that in mind, that if you took a backup a week ago, just make sure that you take a backup before you do something, because it could be out of date. It's probably best to take a backup before you make right before you make changes, because if you have a backup from 7 days ago and you push it up, there's a potential that there's new resources that aren't in your backup file, which will create issues for you, and then you have to start manipulating more. But let's go back to the demo. So we'll increase the serial, and then we'll just push the state file back up. I'll probably do this more later, but we'll just walk through the simple concepts of doing a pull and a push. So all you need to do is a tf state push, and then the file. And then this will push it back up. Actually, I didn't increase the serial. So this will show you the error. So let's let it error out. See you here. So it tells you that the serial isn't newer. So we've just changed it to 4, and we'll push it up. Okay, so that's been done. Okay, so you can see here that there was basically just a write action that occurred. If we go look at versions, you can see that it's been updating as we go along. So if we switch back to the blog, okay, so I'm not really going to talk about how you back up state in the portal, but blob versioning, as I just showed you, is probably the recommended way right here, where we can actually right click and you can go make current version. You don't need to modify any serials or anything, it will just do it. So the blog also covers different options. So in this case, we can also use the Azure Portal. I just showed blob versioning. The other option is to use snapshotting. So if we go to snapshots, just quickly, you can actually perform a snapshot straight away before you do it. So because a version will only capture a version on a write action, but if you want a real-time backup, you can use snapshots. So let's go back to the blog. And in the blog, so I've shown how to restore that, and there's different options there for blob versioning and snapshots. So let's talk about importing resources. So importing resources is when you want to bring in an existing resource in Azure into Terraform state management. The other, I guess, use case would be if you were trying to move resources to a different state file as well, where you'd have to remove it from here, import it over here. Another common issue with Terraform is when you get the resource already exists, which is when Terraform fails on an apply at some point and it creates the resource, but it doesn't write the resource to state. And then you have to either delete the resource, reapply, or import it. So there's three things that we need. So we need code that is written to cater for that resource. So you need to know certain things, such as the target resource reference. So we'll quickly talk about that when I show you the demo, and obviously the resource ID. Now, there's also something else that I discovered is HashiCorp documentation. Actually, on every resource, so if you look here, I'm at the NSG resource somewhere. So you can see here, I'm at the network. And if we scroll to the top, so the link goes right to the bottom to the import, but this is a resource. So right at the bottom, there's an import section, which actually shows you, how to import the resource. So sometimes you need to know this because resource IDs can get a bit funny on some resources. So this is super handy. I'll show you basically how to import a resource. So if we go back to VS Code, so I've gone and deployed a resource. So I'm going to jump ahead. I didn't remove it. So I'm going to remove NSG2. I've also got versioning, don't need a backup, but anyways, this is a demo. So we're going to remove this resource first. And obviously we can see what the resources are here, which is why I knew which one I wanted to delete. So I'm just removing 2. And this will just remove it from state. So if we just go back to the Azure Portal, you can see here the NSG demo 2 still exists, and we've only removed it from state. If you have a look here, so if we just run a TF state list, this will show you all the resources and their references in state. Super handy when you need to know what something may or may not be. So if we look at the code here, we go to demo. So you can see here we have NSG2. So this is what I mentioned about having the pre-written code. So you can see here that this demo 2 is the name. So you can see here that the first resource is named this. So I know that this unique identifier, NSG, this resource will be NSG2. So pretty much to import the resource, we can just do this. You can see that there is no NSG2 resource for the actual NSG, but there are other resources which I removed. That's basically just default features in the AVM module itself. So if we just do a Terraform import and we need the reference, so this would be NSG2, and then we need the resource ID. If we just get the resource ID under properties, and if we just paste it here and we just run it. Just trying to get used to OBS. Turns out you can automatically switch different recording scenes by tabs. So it's getting a bit confusing to manage, to be honest. So you can see here it's reading state. You should get some green text when it's successful. So you can see here, import prepared and import successful. So now if we do a list, we should now have the NSG2. So if you look here, it should be to this. So this is back. And the other thing is, if I just do a Terraform plan, so TFP is my little alias, there should be technically no changes. I probably should have shown this before when I removed it from state, because it would have shown that it was going to create the NSG. But this should have no changes. And that's pretty much it. But what we'll do is, let's remove it again. I want to show you the code blocks, because the code blocks are super handy. So if we go back to the blog, you can see here I've just run the import command. Obviously, this code here is super handy. If we go back to the code, I've just removed it. So I'll show you the Terraform plan. So it should technically create the NSG. And while that's happening, we'll just create a new file. We'll just call it import. .tf, and basically it's import, and then it's from, oh whoops, missing source file snapshot. I think that's, I think I jumped the gun. Let me run that again. I think it's because I had a half edited Terraform file. So this should show the creation of NSG2 again, because I've just removed it from state and state doesn't know about it. So you can see here, it basically wants to deploy it. But what we're going to do is we're going to import it by code this time. So it's, we're just going to go to, so you can see here, the plans are also handy if you don't know what things will be. So I can basically just do that, and then it's and then we enter the ID, and I should be able to get the ID from the previous command for now. I don't know if the ID needs to be in quotes. It might need to be in quotes. Let's put it in quotes. So you can just do a Terraform validate just to make sure that syntaxing is correct. Okay, now I need to update my blog to put quotes in it. And if we just do a Terraform, let's do a Terraform plan first, so you can see what it is going to do. It should say this resource will be imported. And again, this is a great way of running import commands, because I've done it in the past where we had to authenticate locally, which means we needed to generate secrets for service principals, and they were highly privileged ones, to execute import commands locally. Yeah, it's a bit messy. But you can see here, it says it will be imported. Hopefully I'm recording the right screen. So we'll just run a Terraform apply. Again, I have aliases, so TFA is what I use to run Terraform apply. Has auto approve in it too. Okay, so you can see it says 1 to import. So import's done. So if I do a TFP again, so a Terraform plan, you see the code is still there and it shouldn't do anything. But obviously it's best practice to clean up your files afterwards. Okay, so you can see there's no changes. If we go back to Azure, obviously there's no changes to anything here, so resources are still there. Now we're going to move resources. So moving resources is generally when you're refactoring code. Generally, that's what I've noticed. Or if you want to directly move something in state, so it's not really an import if it's already in state, but you want to move it to a different resource. And the example I have here is a native resource, which is a network security group, and then we're going to move it into NSG3. So again, Terraform CLI. So we'll just do a TF, let's go back to the command. So let's do a TF state pool, and then we'll just call it backup to.tf state. So we'll just delete this import file. Now what we're going to do, let me show you the state file. So it's state list. Now, where is it? Yeah, it's basically this resource is the native resource, which we're going to move into NSG3 under a module, and it should introduce more changes. So let's quickly do that. I'll just show you one example, which would be the Terraform state move command. But again, if we go back to the blog, you can actually do it in code as well. So I'll just demonstrate one, which is the old school way. But I think doing most things by code where possible is probably the better option, because then you can have plans which show you what's going to happen before you apply. I believe the Terraform state move has a dry run option as well. When I used to be super cautious on modifying state and always worried about touching state, I would use the dry run command, which is like a simulated plan on a move. I could probably show you that now too as well. So let's just do it. So okay, so if we quickly just try a dry run. So it looks like I've been running all these commands and I wasn't recording the screen. So I'm going back to it just to show you what I just did. So I did this, and then I had the error because the module didn't exist. So I got TFI, which is Terraform init. So because we've declared a new instance of a module, we need to do an init to basically download those instances of the module. And then what I'll show you is a Terraform plan, which should show us a destroy of the native resource, recreate or a new deployment of NSG3, and whatever changes that are inside the module should also show. Hello, so editing Sunny here. So I totally forgot to show you what the dry command actually does. So let's quickly flick over to it. And if we just quickly zoom in and we just run this command, as you can see, it states that it would move the resources that we expect. It's always good to use the dry run command to sort of build confidence with state commands. But anyways, let's get back to the video. So generally, if it's like for like, and you do a Terraform apply, there shouldn't be many changes. But obviously with the module, there's generally things that are enabled, which may not be enabled on certain resources, and they will automatically get enabled. So you can see here, it's going to destroy the native resource because I've changed the code, and then it's going to deploy the new module version and then add the rule and add any other additional features. So let's do the move. So let's remove the dry run. So again, I don't know where I was at in the recording. So we're going to run a Terraform state MV, and then we're going to move what the source is in the current state file, and then we're going to move it to the target on what we want it to be and what we expect it to be. So we already know what the formatting is for the NSG module. So we'll just move it. Obviously, you can read along in the blob, and this will, I'm calling it blob, the blog, and that will explain, I guess, in more instructions on how to do things. So don't worry if I'm skipping ahead on certain things. You can always go back and read the blog. Not blob, blog. Okay, so it's done. So we'll do a Terraform plan now. And what should happen is the additional features should be added, but there shouldn't be a destroy and a redeploy of a new NSG. So we've currently just moved it in state. So it's kind of like an import, but not. It's like we're just moving it to a different resource key on what Terraform expects. So if we have a look here, you can see here it's going to create the rule. Now, this is most likely because it's embedded inside an NSG. Or it may mean, no, there's actually no destroy. So unfortunately, this is what it is. But we can see, let's have a look at the Azure Portal quickly. Now it's NSG old. Let's have a look at what rules there are here. So you can see here, obviously I've got any, but I have nothing attached to this NSG, which is why this thing's probably complaining. Now, if we have a look here, the rule doesn't seem to be anything different. So these are the precautions that you need to take when you're doing certain things, because some actions can result in a disaster as well. Now, NSG rules, I'm not too fast at this point, but the plan before didn't show it was going to destroy an NSG rule and recreate it. So it's potentially how the resource itself is managed, because you can create, let's have a quick look at the module. Let's go back to the code. If we have a look quickly at the module, NSG3, let's try and see what it does. These modules have a lot of info. Now, if we go back to the code for a sec, so there's a security rules variable. Let's go back to, actually I could probably just search here. No, it's not here. So let's go to variables. What's this? Okay. Variable security rules. Okay, so there's a variable here. Okay, because there's a main.rules. Okay, so it's creating the rules in a different resource, not inside the NSG. Because I think with an NSG resource, let's have a quick look. I think I've got the link somewhere here. Now, I think you can create a NSG. Yeah, so you can create an NSG with the security rules inside it. Or you can create a security rules resource. So you can create it with an NSG or outside of the NSG. So you can see here. So this module appears to be creating it outside of the NSG. So if we just go back to VS Code, let's do a Terraform apply. So this will finalize the move and make it operate within that module resource. Okay, so you can see it's adding the telemetry. Okay, so I've got an error, funny enough. It's actually complaining about the rules. which is interesting. So let's import it. I haven't really imported NSG rules before. Let's see if we can. So what you can just do, this is a good little showcase. So let's import it. So we can go, we can obviously do it by code as well, but we'll do the import. You can see here what it's going to be. So this will be the key here. I thought it was odd that it was creating it, but we can basically just copy and paste this, and that should import it. Okay. So there's a tendency for these things to complain. So you got to put these in individual quotes because there's quotes in the key names, which is quite annoying. And if you have Windows, you have to escape the characters too, which is even more annoying. You can see here, this should import it, hopefully. Okay, so import was successful. We'll do another Terraform plan. Terraform plan should not show any changes to the security rule, hopefully this time. Okay, so there's no changes. So if we just quickly flick over to the Azure portal. So obviously that test is test 123 rule is still there unchanged. No activity logs, hopefully, with any changes is the expectation. No, that was when I deployed it. Okay, so back to the blog. So we've just moved resources now. Now, removing resources, so this is generally if you want to manage resources outside of Terraform state. Also, as I mentioned, if you ever have to migrate resources to different state, you have to remove it from here, import it here, which I've had to do. We called them conversions, which we had a whole bunch of legacy code, which we're moving to newer modules and new workspaces and new state. So that was where we used it a lot. But generally, if you want to remove something, it's just easier sometimes. Like if you're doing a decommission, you can remove all the resources and just delete the actual resource group or something. And that just saves you a bit of time, but do it however you please. So I don't know if we're really going to show you the remove options because I used it before. I actually removed the NSG before I import it. So I'm probably going to flick over that because I don't want this video to be too long. There is also a remove block, but to my understanding, I don't think you can remove a reference. So let's just try that and see what that does, right? I've got a little caveat here. I believe you need to add the lifecycle parameter and destroy equals false to make sure that it doesn't delete the resource. So let's just add a new resource right here. Let's try this. Okay, so if we go back to code, so I just ran a whole bunch of commands and didn't record it again. What we're going to do is let's play around with this remove block, which I've already got here actually. But what I wanted to show you is you can't really remove this integer or this instance of a resource. So if you just do a Terraform plan, it tells you right now that the resource address must be a resource, not a resource instance. And then I attempted to do this, and it also complained with an error saying that it was already in state. So there's a potential you can only remove the actual NSG. Let's try this. So my assumption is, okay, resource type and name. Okay, that's weird. You can't do an instance, but you can do just, yeah, I haven't really used this too much, but I'm a bit reluctant to run remove commands in code. Yeah, it says you can't use an instance, so not a resource instance. So this doesn't work, so let's try what this does. Ooh. Okay, so my assumption is you can only remove the entire module, potentially. You can see here, this is going to remove the whole thing. So that doesn't really help. So, if I deployed, say, a virtual machine, used a virtual machine module, deployed many, it's going to be a bit of an issue. So it says this statement declared it was removed, but it's still declared in configuration, which is a bit weird. Let's do a Terraform apply and see what it does, just out of curiosity. And then that's all that I'll spend on this. So I think it's because, okay, I know what it's complaining about. All right, I need to figure this out because I'm so close. It's because of this. So it looks like, yeah, it has to be the NSG. So if we try it now, it should be happy, because I still had it declared in code and then I had the remove block. So if you want to execute it, you have to have the remove block and you got to clean up the code at the same time, which makes sense. Or else the code will just try and create a new resource and remove it. So it'll be like, what do I do? So you can see there, that's what I was complaining about. So you can see here, it'll just destroy everything. I mean, yeah, I haven't really had to remove too much in bulk. But anyways, let's go back to the blog. Let's go to the next thing, which is unlocking state. So unlocking state generally occurs when you have pipeline runs that have failed applies, where they error out and a graceful shutdown doesn't occur. So I should be able to emulate this problem. So, but we'll quickly just talk about the options on how we can unlock. So you can use Terraform to unlock it, and you'll get a lock ID, which will be present in the error message, as well as you can unlock the storage account state itself. But this is actually blob-name, so I'll update this because I ran this earlier as a test. But we'll run this Terraform force unlock command. Again, if you don't have access to the state file, then you may have a challenge, and this might be your other option. But let's see if I can emulate the error. So let's go back to code quickly. So generally I can just do a Terraform init, I believe, and then I can just kill it. Let's try and run a Terraform plan. Hopefully I have a locked state file. So locking is obviously required when people run Terraform applies. The state file will get locked so no one else can write changes to it. But it looks like I am not able to lock it. Okay, so it looks like I now have a locked state file. So you can see here I've got an ID. So this is a lock ID. So pretty much what we need to run is Terraform force unlock -force, and then just the ID, and that should unlock it. Again, you can break the lease on the storage account too. Actually, let's flick over to the storage account and let's see what state it's in. It should have, so you can see here there's a lease, so you can basically break the lease. I don't know if it shows, yeah, so it shows your lease status is locked. So you can break it here, but what we'll do is we'll run it from the command line. So this should unlock it. So you can see it says it's unlocked. Let's go back to the Azure Portal quickly. Let's do a refresh, and you can see the break lease is now grayed out and acquire lease is there, and you should be able to see lease status is unlocked. So that's basically how you unlock it. Okay, so that's pretty much it. So now you should feel pretty confident working with Terraform State. From backups and restores to imports, moves, and unlocking state. These are the tools that every engineer should have in their toolkit. If you found this helpful, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with others who use Terraform. I've also linked the full blog in the description if you want to dive deeper or follow along at your own pace. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. See ya!